Never attempt to board a Terran ship. In the 8 years since first contact, 97 attempts had been made, and all 97 had ended in a departure. Sometimes frantic, sometimes eerie, but always abrupt. No one fully understood why. There were no signs of sabotage, no automatic defenses beyond the ordinary. Yet something had driven seasoned boarding teams to abandon their missions. Something had triggered immediate evacuation requests, broken the will of grizzled soldiers, rattled calm diplomats, and shattered even the most lauded xenopsychologists. First observer. Atrix studied the Terran exploration vessel Heirloom from an observation dome aboard his own craft. The Heirloom drifted in stasis, silhouette stark against the celestial vista. A Terran long-range survey ship, outwardly unremarkable, plain hull, minimal power readings, an air of quiet challenge. It was known throughout the galaxy that Terrans built strange ships, vessels that could travel farther, endure more, push deeper, yet no alien species had ever understood why or how. Atrix belonged to the Thoan Collective, a civilization priding itself on methodical research and rationality. They had outmaneuvered countless worlds with their relentless acquisition of knowledge. Their biotech vessels were masterpieces of organic engineering. Their quantum processors could simulate entire planetary consciousnesses. By every conceivable metric, they had the advantage over Terran technology. Yet still, the Heirloom hung there, a puzzle daring them to solve it. Respected observer, came a low, modulated voice from the security officer, Saren, who hovered in a meditation harness nearby. The Terran vessel remains dormant. The only detectable activity is the faint hum of environmental stabilizers. Atrix's skin pulsated with caution patterns, indigo and turquoise swirls that had not arisen in his bloodline for 8 generations. He remembered the other attempts, the Zor Navy, who had tried the first ever documented boarding, sending meticulously logical updates every hour until they simply went silent. When recontact was made, those famously unemotional Zor were weeping. They withdrew from all interstellar trade and never spoke of it again. Then there were the Kali, masters of telepathic infiltration. They believed no mental barrier could withstand their formidable mind-scrying abilities. Their top telepath boarded a Terran ship, prepared for anything. She lasted 6 minutes, found drifting in shock, her neural clusters burned out. She uttered only this upon recovery: "Cut off." This was the reply: "There are truths too heavy for thought itself." Next came the Ecrian Hive, who devised an entire brood of specialized drones with no emotional capacity. Pure logic incarnate. The drones advanced through a Terran ship's corridors, only to abruptly cease functioning. Upon retrieval, each drone had somehow developed individual personalities and begged for political asylum. Confronted with that paradox, the brood's matriarch placed herself in indefinite hibernation. That was why Atrix's heart lining still tingled. Every species that tried to board a Terran craft fled with some new scar, and yet the Thene Collective's council demanded answers. He inhaled, addressing his squad. Seema, the science officer with segmented brains capable of parallel reasoning. Saren, the security chief with an unflappable composure forged in the Hive Wars. Voss, the communications specialist whose consciousness was split among 3 co-directive bodies, letting her gather and analyze data from multiple angles at once. And finally Levrin, their medical expert, proficient across a dozen biologies, a necessity given the ship's mysteries. "We proceed with caution," Atrix said. "We attempt docking. Full containment protocols. Quantum entanglement links open at all times. The moment we detect anything anomalous, we extract," Saren finished, flexing a few of his specialized limbs in readiness. In the docking bay, they noted the Terran safety checks were sluggish by the collective standards. Manually confirmed locks, mechanical clamps, redundant pressure seals. It seemed archaic, yet each step felt deliberate, almost ceremonial. Seema was the first to comment. "Terran systems show no advanced quantum leaps. Their computers are inferior on paper. Their hull composition is standard alloys, and their life support is painfully primitive by our measure. So why are their ships so untouchable?" Atrix only repeated what they all knew. Terran vessels routinely outlast ours in deep space. They explore farther, They stay longer. By the time a collective starship needs full overhaul, a Terran vessel is still pushing deeper into unknown territory. We'll see why, Voss said calmly, all three bodies working together, finishing each other's words in a measured chord. The airlock hissed open. A swirl of pressurized oxygen greeted them. Seema's instruments detected no toxins, no viruses, no dimensional distortions. Everything read as normal, the same results that had lulled so many species before them. They stepped inside. Dim corridors greeted them, illuminated only by faint emergency strips. The team advanced slowly. Storage rooms, all standard. Maintenance stations, nothing remarkable. A communal area that seemed suspiciously homey, with tables, chairs, and, bafflingly, decorative lights. What a waste of precious space, Seema remarked, scanning a communal lounge replete with seating that was not strictly utilitarian. Terrans appear to dedicate large swaths of their interior to recreation and relaxation. Voss's three bodies circled the lounge. One lifted a small rectangular piece of material with colored markings. It's a deck of playing cards, she said, scanning. Some kind of analog game. They've got multiple sets. Saren, meanwhile, pointed out half-eaten rations and a game in progress. It looks like they left in the middle of a match, but there's no sign of panic. They just stopped. Atrix felt a disquieting tension, a sense that the ship itself was unperturbed, like it had invited them in. Confirm environmental scans, he muttered. Confirm quantum stability. New friends, Shema replied, frustrated. No hidden compartments, no gravitational distortions, no advanced shielding. It's as if there's nothing here to fear. Levrin finished, scanning a table covered in partially written notes, personal doodles, star charts annotated by hand. But they all knew better. They traversed another hallway lined with large, flat images. Photos, by the look of it, though the collective considered that a low-fidelity medium. Each photo showed Terrans smiling or embracing, sometimes with smaller individuals, children presumably, scenes from celebrations or gatherings. Atrix found himself pausing. It seemed so personal. Well-decorated starship with personal images. Seema asked, couldn't they store these digitally? They do both, Voss answered, pointing out the presence of a small data terminal nearby. But these must have sentimental value. Physical tokens, perhaps. The question hung, unanswered, when a mechanical voice spoke from behind. Welcome to the Aeraloon. I've been expecting you. They spun around, weapons partially raised. A bipedal robotic figure approached, its form deliberately anthropomorphic. A common Terran design choice. I am Koro, the ship's caretaker drone. You might call me the Aeraloon's memory steward. How may I assist? Atrix, after a moment's hesitation, stepped forward. We believed this vessel was abandoned. Why remain? I maintain the ship's fundamental systems and its recollections. Koro said calmly. When the crew evacuated, I stayed. It's my purpose. Jack, his tone was oddly warm for a machine. Saren edged closer, scanning the android for hidden weaponry. No aggressors detected, he murmured through the comm. Atrix addressed the android again. We have come to understand the nature of Terran ships. Past attempts have failed. Koro's mechanical eyes glowed faintly. Yes, they never stay. Perhaps you'd like to see the memory core? That's where most visitors realize what they're dealing with. They followed Koro down narrower corridors, noticing more and more personal objects, half-finished crafts, pinned notes, children's drawings, dried flowers. An unsettling hush weighed on everything. There's personal effects, Zamos began, but Koro anticipated the question. They belong to the crew. Every Terran starfarer carries tokens of home. On long voyages, they're lifelines to what's been left behind. How long is a typical deployment? Atrix asked, though part of him dreaded the answer. Commonly 5 Terran years. Some serve longer. The Aeraloon had a few who stayed a full decade. A shocked silence fell among the Theon team. The collective rotated crews every few weeks to preserve emotional equilibrium and prevent any single team from forming detrimental attachments. A year-long mission was unthinkable. 5 or more was staggering, but Why? Levrin asked quietly. Koro simply gestured to the walls around them, because to push the boundaries of the unknown demands more than fleeting visits. It requires a willingness to endure. They arrived at a circular chamber, the memory core. Walls lined with quantum storage units, seemingly standard. But the physical decor stood out, hundreds of images, trinkets, notes, carefully arranged like a mosaic of lived experiences. Observe, Koro instructed, activating the main display. Holograms flickered to life, showing snapshots of the crew's personal moments. A mother speaking to a child via delayed quantum feed, tears in her eyes because she missed the child's birthday by 3 months. A father learning of his own father's passing. News that took weeks to arrive, another month to confirm. A young officer recording a wedding greeting that would arrive far too late. They store not just the facts of these events, Seema whispered, but also the emotions? Yes, Koro confirmed. Terran quantum logs can archive emotional resonance, the raw imprint of how they felt. Each crew contributes their triumphs and sorrows to the core. Saren's arms trembled, able to suffer the impending disaster which would carry off their people into independent space. They will consent to their calamity with little disturbance to their peace, said Soren. Uro's eyes flickered, so they never forget the weight of their choice to be out here. The displays cycled through more vignettes. A scientist celebrating a major discovery alone, then discovering her partner back on Earth had moved on. A navigation officer replaying a child's first steps, transmitted months late, weeping with joy and heartbreak at once. An engineer who saved a battered ring on a necklace, a wedding band, vowing to put it back on only upon return to Earth. Seema's sensor arrays fluttered in near panic. This is too intense. Voss's 3 bodies stood rooted, each trying to process the raw emotional data. They record their own pain and store it as if it's a treasure. They store everything, Koro said. The sorrow, the birthdays missed, the goodbyes said too late, the celebrations that can't be fully shared. Other species that tried to board discovered it, and they couldn't handle it. The Zeror found it illogical, contradictory. The Kalai found the psychic weight unbearable. The Akrendrones experienced such an emotional onslaught that it birthed individuality. Atrix looked from one holographic memory to another. And the Terrans live with this daily? For years? They do, Coral answered. They build every new starship with these same spaces for personal tokens, these same quantum archives, because for them crossing light years means paying a price, measured in lost moments. Both Julia and her family had suffered terribly that fall, but neither made it past the new bridge. A message chimed through Atrix's entangled communicator. Supreme Coordinator Minex, demanding an update. Have you discovered the Heirloom's secrets? Atrix's mind whirled. In just moments, he'd learned more about Terrans than any prior expedition. The truth was not about weapons or hidden wormholes. It was about a capacity for voluntary anguish. We're close, he replied, voice subdued. Stand by. He cut the link, turning to the caretaker drone. Did they do it to see what no one else has seen, said Koro, to understand phenomena that remain elusive, to push the frontier. It's not that they enjoy the pain, but they accept it. They choose it, so that exploration can continue. Saren exhaled shakily. That was what the others found so horrifying. The knowledge that Terrans endure a torment no one forces on them. It's voluntary. Koro nodded. Yes. For most species, the threat of missing a single birth, or being unable to hold a dying loved one's hand, would be reason enough never to undertake such missions. But Terrans feel heartbreak and press on anyway. Koro led them deeper into the core, revealing a separate alcove. Here, the Araloon's crew had organized physical artifacts, locks of hair, pressed flowers, small toys, family crests, local earthstones, each labeled with a date, some signifying a funeral the crew member missed, or a child's graduation, or an anniversary left uncelebrated. Coral left uncelebrated. We call this the Wall of Worth, Koro explained, a living record of everything the Araloon's crew sacrificed. When they leave, they sometimes donate these items here, so future crews can remember. Some keep a placeholder, promising to return and reclaim it once they're home. Levrin hesitantly picked up a child's drawing, corners worn. It depicted a stick-figure family beneath a sun with a label, "For Mom, come home soon." "They hold on to hope," Levrin breathed. "Yes," Coral affirmed softly. "They cling to it across light years." The silence became a palpable entity as each Thean officer grappled with an onslaught of contradictory feelings: distress, empathy, confusion. Their brilliant scientific minds had never accounted for this level of emotional willpower. "No wonder the Kali telepath collapsed," Voss murmured, "even brushing a fraction of this sorrow. And love could be too much to bear." "We must leave," Seema blurted, all color drained from her fronds. "We should document this phenomenon and go. We cannot stay." Atrix, though he felt the same compulsion to flee, also recognized his duty. "But we must complete our mission. The Council needs to know." "They'll never truly understand," Koro said. "They'll read your data, replicate your images, but they will not feel what you're feeling right now in these corridors." Atrix's voice wavered. "Is that why your ambassadors changed the subject when we asked to board? They'd rather spare us this." The android's gaze, uncannily human, met his. "Partly, and partly because words rarely convey the full truth. Terrans learn early that showing someone their capacity for chosen heartache can be, settling." Gradually, the caretaker drone guided them back to the docking port, and though no threat was posed, none of them could shake a subtle dread. They had uncovered the real reason others never boarded Terran vessels. Not fear of harm, but fear of confronting an alien willingness to live with perpetual absence. At the airlock, Koro paused. "Take with you whatever findings you need, but do not underestimate their cost. Please, remember, they do not do this lightly." As they crossed the threshold to their own craft, Atrix glanced back, seeing the corridors lined with photographs and keepsakes. What they had dismissed as inefficient design now stood revealed as carefully crafted spaces for grief and joy to coexist. They delivered a concise report to the Thumb Collective, the final recommendation: avoid Terran ships, unless absolutely necessary. When pressed as to why, they could only speak of intangible burdens, unresolved tears, and an incalculable emotional mass that no other species could bear. In the following months, xenopsychologists across the collective launched new theories. Perhaps Terrans achieved their galactic expansion not through raw technology, but through an evolved ability to shoulder heartbreak. Maybe the power to endure what others could not was the real reason they could travel so far. Whenever the Terrans were asked directly, they only gave a faint, knowing smile. They never offered official clarifications. They never boasted. Instead, they quietly kept exploring, continuing to send ships like the Aerolune into the silent reaches of the cosmos. Years later, an inquisitive junior researcher at a diplomatic summit asked a Terran envoy, "If it cost so much, missing births and funerals, losing time you can never recover, why not send automated probes? Why send living people?" The envoy's eyes gleamed with that unique Terran mixture of sorrow and hope. "Because exploration isn't just about data, it's about experience. We pay the cost so that the stars have meaning. If there's no sacrifice, there's no real discovery, only sightseeing. And if we're not willing to sacrifice, we aren't really learning anything about ourselves or the universe." Reports circulated throughout the Thum Collective. Whole species updated their travel advisories. Keep a respectful distance from Terran starships, for they bear the weight of incalculable, voluntary loss. But the Terrans pressed on, carrying countless invisible burdens, forging deeper into the unknown. Their ships forever stood as both vessel and memorial. Quantum archives preserving tears right alongside technical logs, personal snapshots interspersed with navigation charts. Many lived past this moment. Many died, and if some recognized that behind every Terran hull lay a fortress of stoic pain and unwavering resolve, well, the Terrans did not deny it. They simply continued forward, living proof that the price of starlight was worth paying. No species who boarded those ships ever remained the same. And perhaps that, in the end, was the final secret. Humans did not merely travel the stars, they carried their broken hearts there, and somehow that made them unbreakable.